Ngā mihi kia koe te katoa, nau mai, haere mai. Welcome to you all. I'd like to open our session with karakia. So, inoi tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhunga, te hei mauri ora. Te mihi tuatahi kia ihua te kaihanga o ngā me katoa. Ngā maumaharatanga, ngā tūpuna, haere, haere, haere. Te mihi tuarua ki ngā mana whenua o te rohe nei, ngā mihi ki a koutou. Te mihi tuatoru ki ngā tangata whenua, me ngā kaimahi o te kāhui rātonga o Housing First, ngā mihi ki a koutou, nau mai, haere mai ki a koutou. Ko waiahau, ko whiki ham, tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no Ngāti Tūwhare tō, me kahungunu. My name is Vicky Ham, and I come from the tribes of Ngāti Tūwhare tō and Kahungunu, and I am a Māori staff member who sits within the backbone team for the Housing First Collective. Ngā mihi kia koutou. Hey, I'd like to acknowledge my my colleagues behind the scene here who are supporting us with the technical side of things, so ngā mihi kia koutou. And also, kei a koi, a big welcome to yourself, Ayla. Ngā mihi kia koi I te tuahine. Ayla is a dynamic wahine Māori, he māma, also a lecturer as well. She's also a fitness trainer as well, whānau, so wow, ka mau te wehi. And also a plant-based mama, and she is also a Maramataka practitioner. So ngā mihi kia koe I te tuahine. Ayla was also raised in South Auckland, so hey, big shout out to all our South Auckland whānau, ngā mihi kia koutou. And also is mana whenua of our Waikato and Tainui region. So ngā mihi kia koe I te tuahine. Nau mai, haere mai ki te kaupapa nei. So before I hand this time over to Ayla, whānau, I just like to share a little bit about the purpose of what our session is actually about. So our session, you know, provides a real Māori worldview insight into how Maramataka can be lent into or used to support our self-care or our hauora, our whole health and well-being. What I love about Maramataka is it just aligns and weaves in so nicely to our taiki framework, in particular the kōkiri, and the pointer of our kōkiri is around Te Ao Māori, and then how it links into the Housing First principles and also weaves in heara tikanga in terms of rangatiratanga, Whanaungatanga, manaakitanga, and then what does that actually look like in practice as practitioners. So, ngā mihi kia koutou, hey, enjoy our session. Feel free to pop any questions in the chat. We have a questions and answer section that we will be providing the opportunity for people to ask questions. So pop your questions in the chat. We also have a quiz. Yes, we have a quiz. So please take note of what Ayla is about to share with you. And there's also a prize on who is the winner. So without further ado, I'd like to hand this time to Ayla. Ngā mihi kia koe I te tuahine. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora whai Vicky. Tēnā tātou. E ngā iwi, e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā mātā waka e tau nei. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko te mihi tuatahi ki au koe whaiwiki. Kia ora, tēnā koe mō tō tautoko o tēnei kaupapa o te Maramataka, tō horonga ki au mō tō mahi, mō tō whānau, mō tā tātou kaupapa o te Maramataka, I wainganui ngā kōrero o ngā tūpuna, he kōrero tuku iho. Nō reira, tēnā koe whaia. Ka mihi au ki a koutou, mō tō ako o te mahi Maramataka, mō tō karanga o tēnei kaupapa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko ai au, he uri ahau no Waikato Tainui, ko Ngāti Tahinga me Ngāti Tamoho ngā hapu. Ko Taupiri te maunga, ko Waikato te awa, ko Tainui te waka, ko Ngāti Tahinga te hapu, ko ngā hauewha te marae ki Pukekohe. E noho ana hau ki a Manurewa, I nai nei. Ko Ayla Hoeta ahau. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora tātou. I just did a big mihi to Whaia Wiki. Thank you so much for that introduction, Whaia. And thank you for having me. And for the honunga to this kaupapa o te Maramataka. It's really amazing to be in this space where we learn about the mātauranga of our tūpuna and how that can guide us in our mahi. So thank you. I'm from Waikato Tainui, as Whaia said, and I live in the deep south, Manurewa. I'm born and raised in Pukekohe. So this is where I have lived my whole life, and this is where I also practice Maramataka. And it's mostly through my mahi hākinakina, so my training, mahi mara, my gardening, and then mahi āhinenga, also mental health and wellbeing as well. Yeah, ka pai. Okay, we're going to get into it now. So on the slide, you should be able to see I put a waiata in here for us because Whaia did a karakia for us. So I thought we'd do a waiata just to bring us back to that toe, enhance that toe that has already been set. So if you know this waiata, you can unmute yourself if you want to, or leave yourself muted and sing in the background. Ka pai? Okay. Te marama I te pōne, ngā whetū I te rangi, o ake au hine, papaki kau ana e, me pehera e hine, e mutu ai tō aroha, me rukuruku pēa, ngawai o tāmaki e. The moon at night. Oh, aroha mai. I was just going to translate the waiata. The moon at night with the stars in the sky. I awake at it, and it's a new day and a gentle breeze. How a young maiden might one put an end to love by diving perhaps into the waters of Tāmaki. Kia ora. You can skip now, Whaia. Anei te whakatauki. Tuia ki te rangi, tuia ki te moana, tuia ki te whenua, karongo te pō, karongo te ao. So this is a whakatauki that some use as a karakia. This is one that a few organisations use because of the kōrero that it enhances. And this is about, from a Te Ao Māori perspective, our view, our holistic view of the world. Everything is connected and nothing is done in isolation. From us to the rangi, the sky, to the earth, to the deepest parts of the oceans, we are all connected to one source, and this is our view of the world. So when one thing changes in the sky or in the water, it affects us, humans, and the taiao, the environment. There is also a balance between the opposites, and although we may be opposite, we are still one, and it says there, tāne and wahine, male and female, rā and pō, day and night. Opposites, marama, the moon, the sun. Marama, the wahine, the sun, the tāne. But we are all one. Okay. So, te rā mutu whenua. So we're going to talk about the Maramataka today. and I'm going to start with what today is in the Maramataka. Today is called Mutu Whenua, and Mutu means to finish, and Whenua is land. So what that really means is we've come to the end of all mahi, or all things that happen in the Te Ao comes to rest, or comes to close, or comes to shut down. And i te pōnei, or apopo, there's a new moon. So the whero moon is tomorrow, which means we start the whole lunar cycle again. So at this time, the natural energy flow is to be quiet, and to come down, and to rest and reflect, and to stop trying to achieve or garden or do too much mahi. So if you're feeling a little bit slow or tired, or it's hard to get up this morning, it's because we're supposed to be resting. Okay, the purpose of this wānanga, just to carry on from what Whai Vicky talked about, it's to learn about well-being through the eyes of Maramataka, or through the eyes of Te Ao Māori, to learn about how our well-being connects to the environment. It's also a time for us to come together in wānanga. So this phase, Mutu Whenua and Whiro, is very low, but it's also the best time for absorbing and retaining mātauranga knowledge. So during these low phases, it's the best for hinengaro. We are all on our personal journeys and trying to learn in our own ways more about Maramataka, Māori knowledge, and also how we strengthen our commitment to Te Tiriti o Waitangi. This will also help us to gain more insight into how the Maramataka is relevant to our mahi, and what's some practical things that you can do on a day-to-day or week-to-week that will help you to be inclusive of Maramataka or mātauranga. Skip this slide. Thank you. Here's some keywords that I might use, and if you don't know, I'll just put it here in case. So tohu is observations or signs. Marama, moon, conflict message. Maramataka is environmental calendar. Maramataka is environmental calendar. That's going to come up in the quiz. Whetū is stars. Koha is to give. So koha is like a, I think we all know what koha is. When you give something, like anything. Te Ao means environment. Rangi, sky. Whenua, land. And moana is water. Okay, what is the Maramataka? So I'm just going to assume that some of us don't know much at all about it. And if you do, kei te pai, it's all right to hear it again. Marama is moon and taka is cycle. So Maramataka is the moon cycle. But if you say that to an elder or kaumātua, you'll get a growling, because they'll say it's not just the moon cycle, it's the environmental calendar. It's not just based on the moon, it's based on the trees, the moana, like everything that lives in the Te Ao and the environment is the Maramataka. So don't say moon cycle only. The Maramataka is 30 days. It's not 31 or 28 like February. This month, just gone. It's always 30 days. But depending on the iwi, where you come from, or which region you're learning from, they change. And this is what I know. Every 4 years, the Maramataka, so it's always 30 days, which means you have a little bit of time left at the end of the year. Every 4 years, our tupuna observed takurua, which is the winter stars that would rise before Matariki. And every year, takurua gets lower and lower on the horizon. And on the 4th year, when it's at its lowest, that's when they would add in an extra month. And that would make up the timing to be perfectly aligned with a year's cycle, if that makes sense. What do we know about the Maramataka? The Maramataka has 5,000 years of mātauranga that was brought throughout the Pacific. So Maramataka is not just here in Aotearoa. There are other tohu and Maramataka we know of across the Pacific, and we know this through some pūrākau and through waiata and through Māori chants that capture a lot of the ancestral stories And then we also know a lot has been lost because it wasn't written and because of other things like the Tohunga Suppression Act, which stopped our tupuna from talking about or practicing Maramataka. There are some like the Māori chants, whakaeke, that capture the observations of a star that blew up. I think it's like 800 years ago or something, and it talks about where the waka was, where our tupuna were on the water when they saw it, and how long it lasted. That meteor lasted for many months, actually, and those are some of the tohu that help guide us in understanding different parts and phases of the Maramataka. So there's all this abundance of knowledge. It's just trying to access it through different kōrero and waiata. The Maramataka is based on tohu, signs that are in 3 parts of the Te Ao, and that is the whenua, the land, the moana, the ocean, and the rangi, the sky. Ocean, land, sky. Those 3 areas, the tohu are connected to each other. So when one star rises, something changes in the ocean and something blossoms on land. It's all connected. So our whetū at the moment is Rehua. That's our summer star. That's Antares. And that when that star rises, there's a tohu like the Puhutikawa. When the Puhutikawa flowers back end of last year, there's a certain time and the star would rise around the same time. There are also seasons. So we don't have seasons like summer, autumn, winter, spring. We actually have 2 seasons, summer and winter, but in each of those seasons there are kaupeka phases. So we have 7 summer phases and we have 6 winter phases, and every phase is indicated by a tohu. So for example, the Puhutikawa is one tohu, and that's for Mātiti. I'll get to that slide and I'll talk about that more. Yeah, okay, next slide please, Claria. Thank you. Oh, ane te Maramataka. So this is a Maramataka dial, and I think everyone was sent one. And this, to me, is the best way that you can start to attune to the Maramataka. You need to know what day you're on, or you need to know what phase you're in. So I'm not trying to remember every one of the 30 days. That has a list of all 30 days. It's easier to remember the phases. So we're going to go over 5 key phases in the Maramataka. And that's the best way to kind of remember. And I'm going to tell you how to set the dial. It's also written in the instructions in the middle, so that you know what day you're on. So the way you set the Maramataka is you just need to know when the full moon is. For us in Tamaki in Auckland, this is how we set it. Some other iwi, they set it by the fetal moon, which is the new moon tomorrow. We're going to stick with Auckland, eh? I think all of us are in Auckland. So you find out when the full moon date is. Does anyone know when the full moon date is? You can put it in the chat. I think I'll see it if it comes up. No? So I think the next full moon is the 18th? 17th? Let's go with the 18th. 17th. Okay, we'll go with the 17th. Thank you, Nicola. So that little circle with the numbers on it, you cut that out and you put it into the big circle, and you align number 17, because that's the next full moon, on Rako Nui. So Rako Nui is that in the purple phase at the bottom, and it's got a yellow moon. In Rotorua, yeah, you can still use this as a guide. There'll be, usually they're only slightly changed by 1 or 2 days, but it's all right as a guide. That's why I say go by the phases. So if you put that little dial into the big dial and you align 17 on Rako Nui, and you go back to today's date, Wednesday the 2nd of March, what day is it? It's supposed to be around Mutu Whenua o Whiro. That's just a rough guide, but that's kind of how we set the dial. Okay, should we haere tonu? Move on. This is another, kapai, mati whenua. So this is another Maramataka dial, and this one is specific to planting. So if you're a person who's a fisherman or fisherwoman and a gardener like me, then you'll know that there are some specific times where you plant and fish and times when you don't plant and fish. If you're an expert, but I know I go down to the awa and there's people fishing it like now and it's not a time to fish. So the whiro time when it's a new moon and the energy is really, really low, at that time, the water table in the earth goes right down. And when it's right down, everything is kind of closed. So nothing is out. So if you go fishing, there's no fish out. If you plant, it won't really grow well because the water table is so low. It's science, really. So we wouldn't fish or plant around phases like today and tomorrow. So those low phases, like whiro, as I said before, is more for hinengaro. So it's for studying and retaining information. On this dial, you can see there's some thumbs up and some thumbs down. So I think this has been sent out as well. If you want to try something to align with the Maramataka, you could try some planting and it'll tell you the best days for planting. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, 5 key phases. So the first key phase, rākau nui. Rākau nui. Rākau means tree, nui means big trees. It's kind of like everything you plant on this phase will grow big. That's kind of what it means. But it's also when the moon is full and you have a big full moon, you have a high gravitational pull, you have the highest water table content more than any other time of the month. It's the highest during the full moon. The full moon is for 3 nights. It's not just one night. Obviously, that middle night is the fullest. But if you go outside and have a look, the moon is actually full for 3 nights. And we call that phase the rākau nui phase. So our tupuna knew at that time, if you're feeling hypo, you're supposed to, because in the environment, everything is high. And you plant everything at that time if you want it to grow big. He nui. If you want to try to study or retain information, it might not be the same because it's a time of high social and physical activities, if that makes sense. And when the table is high, the water table, everything is out. The kore days, which comes after the rākau nui, so you can see at the bottom of the dial it says Ohua Oturu Rākau Nui Rākau Mātohi. That's the high phase. And then 2 days later, you've got kore, te whiwhia, kore, te rāwea, kore, piringa tangaroa. Kore means nothing. Nothingness, do nothing. That's kind of what it means. But it actually means do some reflection, do some meditation, do some karakia. Go for a walk, hang out with your whānau, stop trying to be ambitious. It's the time to come down. So in our mahi, we're probably expected to be like rākau nui every day, 100 every day, but that's not natural. You're not 100 every day. Like sometimes you're 100, sometimes you're 0, and that's natural, and that's kei te pai. And then after the rākau nui phase, the kore phase, you see the blue, which is tangaroa. Now tangaroa, so here's all the fishermen people, everyone who fishes or plants. Tangaroa is the most abundant, productive time of the month, and that lasts for about a week. You have tangaroa mua, tangaroa roto, tangaroa kiokio, o tāne, o rongonui, o Māori. So 6 days. And in that week, it's not super high like rākau nui and you're hypo and you can't focus because you're trying to do everything. It's high, but in a way where you are productive. So this is Papa Ririata. I've been taught by Papa Ririata Mākiha. He's like our rangatira in everything mātauranga. He's a tohunga. He always says that if you're trying to get a positive outcome or trying to deal with issues that haven't been addressed, that is the time to do it during that tangaroa phase, because you're more likely to get positive outcomes from people. There's one day in that tangaroa phase called tangaroa kiokio, and I do some work with Te Papatawhai, Department of Conservation, and they do a lot of pest control. And we've been taught that during that tangaroa kiokio phase, that's the day where most of things reveal themselves. So rats come out during the day, flounder come out during the day. Everything that is normally hidden comes out, including our feelings and emotions. So people can be a little bit feisty on that day. But that's a day where we try to align a lot of the pest control with Doc on the tangaroa kiokio day. And then if you can see the tangaroa kiokio day and you go to the opposite day, which is huna, so you go 2 weeks after tangaroa kiokio, just go around the dial. Huna is the opposite to that day. So everything is out in abundance and showing and revealing itself on kiokio, but on huna, everything is absolutely hidden. You won't find anything and you won't get anything from anyone because people also hide or they go more introverted. And that's the same in the moana. So tuna, eels and fish and everything hide on te rā huna. It's pretty buzzy when you, like, the more I learn about this. O tāne, so the day after tangaroa kiokio is o tāne, and that's tāne mahuta. So it's a give back day. We call it a koha day, and we koha back to tāne mahuta, the god of the forest. So we give back to the forest and the trees and the birds. That's a specific day for giving back to the ngahere. O rongonui, so I can go through every single day, but that's like a really long wānanga. I'm just going to go through some. O rongonui, one more is rongomatane. So that's our atua. These are our stories and this is how we see the world and how we've been raised. But rongomatane is the god of growth and cultivation. And that was 2 days ago. O rongonui. So that's my favorite day, o rongonui. It's at the end of the tangaroa productive phase, and that's when everything grows. So if you're a gardener, you grow during this period, and o rongonui is when I had picked out all these little seedlings that had grown in my pathway, because the seeds had been taken by the wind, my flowers, and they're like sprouting up, so I transplanted them on that day. Another thing might not be for the tāne's ears, but for the wahine, what we've learned is that during this productivity for Papa Tūnaku or Mother Earth, it's the same for wahine. So a wahine's body is the same as Papa Tūnaku. When Papa Tūnaku is in abundance or productive, so are we. So I think this is the easiest time to get hapu. Okay, moving on. Whiro is the lowest time of the month. That's tomorrow. Whiro is like the mischievous atua. He's like the oldest brother of Tāne Mahuta, Tangaroa, like all of the brothers who separated Rangi and Papa. Whiro was the oldest, and he was, I think he was a bit evil. He's like, some would say he's kind of like how in a Christian faith you have the devil. Some people say Whiro kind of resonates with that, like he created all of the diseases, all of the darkness, to try to fight his brothers when, they had their own fights. Anyway, we look at Whiro like a time of kia tūpato, so to be careful. And so that's now. And the phases are usually in 3 days. So if you think about that, it's easier to remember. So Whiro is today, tomorrow, and the day after. Those 3 days, Mutu Whenua, Whiro, and Tiria. And those 3 days are very similar. And it's a time to, like, you wouldn't go fishing, you wouldn't go on the water, you wouldn't go into the ngahere, into the forest. It's dangerous. We never get sent out into the environment during those low phases because you're not supposed to be out. You're supposed to be back home with your whānau, keeping the fires burning. That's what we've learnt. So Whiro, although it sounds like it's scary and he's a scary atua, and it's the new moon, it's actually the best time for studying, retaining information, wānanga. So our tupuna used to wānanga in the dark. They retain information very different to how we go to kura today and learn at school. The way we learn at school is through written, everything's written. But our tupuna learnt through memory and through oral. So nothing was written. They would wānanga in the dark during these whiro and kore phases for days, and they covered all the windows so it was kept dark, and the amount of information that they could retain was beyond what we could probably retain today, because that's how they learnt. That was their first language, was through oratory and memory, and they would just chant all of these karakia and kōrero, and it would be stored here, but it wasn't stored on paper, which makes it a bit hard for us today, some things. But there's probably a blessing in learning that way, because of how you would unlock different parts of your hinengaro. Yeah, so that was a practice during whiro. And then you come around from whiro and you get to the next phase, which is tamatea. And tamatea is very unpredictable. So that time is when it's okay for fishing. It's okay, like it's a moderate energy, but it's very unpredictable. So some examples I've had is once I found $100 in my bag on a tamatea day. So that was a great unpredictability. But I've also had some bad ones. So one of my best friends, she doesn't like tamatea. She'll message me on this phase and be like, is it bloody tamatea? Because things are not going well for her. But for some of us, some phases will work well for you and some might not. And that's where you need to tune in yourself, because we're all different. Our energy is different. And we need to figure out how we flow with the natural source, or the natural one energy, because we're all different. Like, most people really love the rākaunui phase. I don't, because I can't focus. It's too high for me. But I love orongonui, which comes down a little bit. Yeah, it's really fascinating. It's kind of like our Māori horoscopes, kind of. I've checked the birthday of my sons. I've got twin boys. Shucks, I forgot to mention them. I've got twin boys, and I went back to check because you can go back and check your Maramataka day you were born by because you can Google the full moon for any month. So I Googled the full moon for August 2007. That's when my sons were born, and they were born on Rākau Mātohi, which is a full moon, and they're hyper as. They were so unsettled as kids, and they woke up 3 times every night for 1 year, and that's when they were born. So I think you might find some deeper insights about your own tamariki or yourself when you just have a look at the Maramataka when you were born, or even the seasons, were you a matariki baby, or were you a rehua baby? It's summer now, because different stars are up when where the stars aligned when you were born. I just think it's fascinating. Yeah, and I also think it's fascinating to see how the Maramataka, because it is a very feminine energy. We all have a feminine energy, but it really attunes to that side of us. And for the wahine's body, and our ikura, our periods, and our haputanga, all of those things, they very much tie into this. Kapai, I'll move on to the next slide. So what's the best activities for tangaroa? So high productivity. So tangaroa, the most productive. Tangaroa, the most productive. This is going to be in the quiz. Best for anything near the awa, the water. So tangaroa is the god of the ocean. If you have an estuary or any waterway where you live, if you go for a walk or something, go visit the awa during this time. It's amazing to take note of how you feel or what you notice during the tangaroa time, because it's a time to be close to water. It's also the best time for meetings, get the best outcomes, ask for pay rise during tangaroa. Training, so my training, I attune to the Maramataka. So during those high phases, tangaroa and rākaunui, I go high intensity with my CrossFit, and then with my low energy phases, I go slow movement, heavy, so strength based, and that works for me, and that's how I take my classes, and it seems to be okay, I think, for others. Rākaunui, super high, activities everywhere. So I've also spoken to Ricky Solomon. Ricky Solomon is a Maramataka practitioner, and his mahi is in mental health and wellbeing. and he's doing his PhD on suicide prevention and mental health and how that connects to the Maramataka. And it's really fascinating. Like, you can look him up, but he talks about how the Maramataka connects to our mental health and how it connects to suicides. And there are the highest, how do I explain this? If you go to the darkest period, which is whiro, and korekore during the darkest phase, which is apunga, August. So August is the month that has, it's kind of like the whiro month is August. It's the darkest of the year in terms of you got to be careful during August. That is also the time with the highest suicide rates. So August, korekore, and whiro phases have the highest rates of suicide. So our tupuna knew these things, so that is how they aligned well-being. If you knew these phases were coming up and you knew you had vulnerable people in your whānau, you would prepare yourself and prepare them or awhi them and nurture and care for them at those most vulnerable times. And that's what we have been taught to do during these low phases, whiro and korekore, is to check in on your whānau. And that's why you're supposed to stay home, and it's about your whānau and your closeness with yourself. And I know half the time we can't even do that because some of us are in isolation, but those are the things that we've learned. It's a time to come inside and care. Yeah, so that's pretty fascinating. You can look him up. Yeah. And then tamatea, dramatic weather changes. See what you notice in the next tamatea phase, like one minute it's raining, next minute it's sunny, next minute you're happy, next minute you're angry. That's kind of what it's like. Some other kōrero I've heard is about, there's a school up north that aligns with the Maramataka in Hokianga, and on those rākaunui phases, they don't keep the kids inside. The kids can't sit still, so they take them outside, they go swimming, they go into the forest and do education outdoors. And so that's kind of like my dream, is that we would have kura and schools and education would align with the Maramataka, because it's aligning with the natural flow. I wonder, I just dream about what difference that would make to a lot of our kids and to our whānau. So how do you prepare for these phases if you know it's coming, like tamatea? Get more sleep, be more hydrated, be more prepared for unpredictability. So you know it's coming up, so prepare yourself. Plan your meetings accordingly, plan your events. Sometimes you can't change the days that things are happening, but you can attune them. So if you have a wānanga plan for next weekend, and next weekend is tamatea or a middle phase, you can attune your wānanga to suit that flow. If it's a low phase, have a lot of energizers. If it's a high phase, ka pai. Yeah. Okay, next slide, please, Clariel. Okay, these are our koha days. So we have 4 weeks in a month, 4 weeks in a lunar cycle. You also have 4 koha days. The first one is huna. That's that day I talked about where everything is absolutely hidden. You're going to get nothing from nobody because they're going to hide everything. That is a give back day. So because it's low and it's a day to not take, you give back to tangaroa. How do you give back to tangaroa? The last 2 years, Auckland has had a drought. Save your water. That's giving back to tangaroa. Or what, find a creative way for yourself to give back. We keep a bucket. We were keeping a bucket in the bathroom to catch our the water from the shower and repurposing it on the garden. Oike is a give back day to Papa Tūnuku. There's many ways to give back to Papa Tūnuku. Giving back to the earth, cleaning her. There's so much pollution and climate change happening right now. I think the greatest gift we gave to Papa Tūnuku was staying in those lockdowns for the last 2 years. All of those lockdowns were the best times for our Te Ao, because the Te Ao got to breathe and replenish itself, while us humans we stayed home and stopped doing bad things to our earth. The next one is otane, so giving back to the ngahere. I know some people who they'll pick up birds. If you live in the rural areas, they pick up dead birds on the road and bury them and do a karakia, and that's their way of giving back to tani mahuta. And then the last one is uenuku. So uenuku means rainbow. So this is an easy way to remember. Uenuku is to give back te ranginui. So giving back to the heavens. What does that mean? That means giving back to your own, elevating your thoughts, meditation, deepening your knowledge, deepening your thinking, making time for stillness and consciousness. That's how you give back te ranginui or karakia. I'll just say one more thing because this is on the quiz also. Uenuku is the best day for mental health. So that is actually a day dedicated to giving back to your own mental well-being and others. So wouldn't it be amazing if that mental health week that we have once a year aligned with a Uenuku day, because that is the natural day to be focused on our mental haura. Okay, thank you, Claria. Okay, what does Maramataka do? This is what it's, so I'm just sharing from what I've learned and what I've seen in my whānau and friends and some of the practitioners I work with, is it has, for me, made me made me present. So I'm more conscious. I walk consciously through my life more than I ever have before. And maybe that's because I'm older too. But, you know, there's so many of our whānau who go around unconsciously. They make poor decisions because they're not conscious when they're making those decisions. They're not present in whatever it is they're dealing with because they're stuck in the past, or they're stressed about the future, or trying to survive. There's all of this take everywhere. But what the Maramataka does is it connects you to the environment. So you're connected to yourself, really, and you're more conscious. And that's like one of the reasons we're on Earth, is to elevate our consciousness. It makes you have manaakitanga for yourself and for everyone, because that includes the Te Ao. Like when you have a connection to the environment, you have more aroha for the environment and for the people, because I just think that's kind of what happens. Yeah, I think you take more time for yourself when you have this appreciation for the Maramataka. You start to make time to observe tohu. And this is what Papa always says, like a lot of people will ask us, like, how do we tune into the Maramataka? And it's not just about learning the knowledge, it's about, like, you don't learn about the moon by looking at the moon on Google. You learn about the moon by looking at the moon outside. You know, we have to go outside and actually observe the environment and the changes to really understand the patterns. And that's how you attune to the Maramataka. Oh, it also does other things, like it made me a gardener. I never used to garden when I was younger. I actually grew up on the market gardens clipping onions, which wasn't, you know, I didn't like that. But today I actually love gardening, and I always garden on those specific phases, and it's like my time. It makes you respectful to the environment, to each other, and it helps us as we start to learn about Maramataka. It'll help us to figure out what can we do to align our mahi. So there's not one answer for this. It could be one thing for each person, but a good start might be that whoever is your like your backbone in your team, they could send Maramataka calendar invites for phases, and it'll go to the whole team's calendar, and then they'll see it sit on the top of their calendar, and you'll know, oh, next week is tamatea. And that just helps you to, because we have to go back to our normal lives in this normal Western calendar. But there is a way, you know, if you can create some habits where you apply little things like that. And there's actually, China is the only country that I know of. I think there's a few other Asian countries who their whole governance is based on both calendars. So they have the Western calendar and then they've got their moon calendar. So that's like amazing. They've kept their indigenous practices through their own calendar and they live like that today. So that means it's possible for us. And that's like the ultimate goal for us, I would say. Okay, applying the Maramataka to daily life. Oh, okay, here's one challenge, one wero, understanding Māori names. So most of the time, we'll have some po or some like fire's got a kuruwai in the background. There will be some things with Māori names and we know nothing about them. And usually those names capture something connected to that Maramataka or to that environment. So street names, the name of your organisation in Māori. So this could be a challenge. How do you apply the Maramataka? Understand the ingoa. Get an understanding of where those names connect to. Because it'll usually connect to a story about the place. Add the phases to your calendar. Set your dial. And try keeping a journal. Aligning your meetings. Grow a kumara. Yeah. I'll skip. Gee, I'm running out of time already. I'm going to quickly go through this. This is my son. So this is a kumara in week 1. And I just say this because it's the easiest activity you could do. If you're not a gardener, get a kumara, put it in a cup of water and leave it for a few weeks. And eventually it'll look like that in week 12. And it's so beautiful. It grows all these like tupu. And you can take those tupu and grow them into the garden. So there's like so much. It's really cheap to do and it doesn't take much effort. But what it does is it gets you to start practicing, and it also has its own modi. The kumara has its own modi, so when you have that in your office or in your kāinga, your home, it's a really good energy. Okay, I'll skip this one. Let's go to the quiz, eh? Sorry, because we're running out of time. Yep, skip. Okay. So, Clarielle, do I just read out the questions, or are you going to bring up a poll?
Yes, so we're going to bring up a poll.
Okay. Okay, first pātai. What day do you use to set the Maramataka dial? Click on one answer. I'm going to time this. Do I go next whenever I want to, Clariel? So the answer was Rākaunui. I'm not sure if you see the answers, but the correct answer, you set the Maramataka dial on Rākaunui. Okay, next pātai. What is the tamatea phase like? Is it reflective? Is it low? Is it productive? Is it unpredictable? Or is it sleepy? 30 seconds. Okay, time. It's unpredictable. Okay, we'll go next. Oh, does it have a natural timer? Next pātai. The Maramataka is based on what? Is it on books, waka, people, or tohu? Kapai. Tohu. It is based on people as well, but tohu is the main one. Next pātai, what moon is whiro? Half moon, new moon, full moon, or sun? And if anyone clicks sun, man. Yep, Whiro is the new moon. So it's the moon you can't see it. So tomorrow night, tonight, if you go out, you won't see the moon. There are 31 days in the Maramataka, true or false? Alright, that is false. There are 30 days in the Maramataka. For here in Auckland, but I know other areas slightly different. Okay, question 6. What does Maramataka mean in English? Yeah, 100%, that one. Next partai. What two phases are reflective and best for ahinengaro, so mental health? What two phases are best for mental health? So there's two answers. Kapai. Which is the best phase to grow kumara or any mara or fishing? %. Awesome. Which is a koha day for mental well-being. So for, meditation, karakia, giving back to ranginui. It connects to a rainbow. This one should be easy. I just said it before. Yep, ranginui. I think we have 3 more questions and then we'll try to leave some space at the end for anyone else's questions. Which is the most productive or fruitful time of the month? Oh, I can see the confusion with Rakonui. So Rakonui is definitely the highest, but Tangaroa is the most productive. That's when the water table is like perfect for growing. 2 more partai. Which phase has the greatest gravitational pull on us? So it'll to do with the size of the moon. Ka pai 100% on that one. Last pātai. What does kore kore mean? Happiness, not happiness. Nothingness, ka pai. And that's the end of the quiz. So we have 5 minutes left, Vicky. I didn't sorry.
Ka pai, ke te pai. Ngā mihi kia koe e te tūhine. Has anyone got any questions at all? There was one that came through the chat, but there might be others. So there was a question from Shelley,
yep.
who says she actually comes from Rotorua, and so she wondered if the Maramataka dial and what you shared can be applied down there in Rotorua.
I think Rotorua will be slightly, they'll have some different ingoa. It'll be the same structure. I think still 30 days, but some of the ingoa are slightly different because they're inland. They're not by the moana, and so they would have gone more by the lakes and the ngahere. So slightly different, but you can still use this for now until you might uncover your own Maramataka.
Ka pai.
And Shelley also asked if the slides will be made available. Yep. Yes, they will.
Yep. Okay. So have you got any other examples of tohu from Ranginui to Papatūānuku to the moana? So for example, you spoke about pahutakawa, and I know pahutakawa, when it blooms, the oysters are quite fat. So it's a sign. Yeah, so have you got anything else that?
Yep, so that's tohu for the kinnas. So that's one tohu when the pahutakawa blossoms bright red, the kinnas are so fat. Another tohu with the pahutakawa is when they flower and they fall quickly from the trees, which they did last year, it's a tohu for drought. So there's not much rain. So it didn't last long on the tree and it fell to the ground. The flower did. And in Hawaii, they have a pahutakawa flower as well, and they call it lehua. So for us, pahutakawa blossoms when rehua rises. When the star Antares rises, the pahutakawa will blossom. In Hawaii, it's the same thing, and they've called their pahutakawa a lehua because lehua rises. Other tohu, te wariu ka taina a rehua, that's one of the sayings, which means the 8th month of the year when rehua, the ground laughs at rehua because it's so dry and there's cracks in the ground in the 8th month of the year, which is January, from our new year, June. That's the tohu. The ground is cracked because it's the driest time of the year. There's many tohu, like there's 7 summer phases. The first one is Matiti Kura, and that is indicated by the ripening of red berries in the bush. Matiti Hana, that is the second phase, and that's indicated by the Puawānanga, which is the flower behind me. That's the native white clematis in Aotearoa, and when that flowers, we've gone into Matiti Hana, and Matiti Hana is the original word for white. So the whole forest turns a brilliant white, traditional, back in the day it did. On the slides, because I didn't make it to these slides, but it talks about many of the tohu that you can see. Right now we're in the 5th, 6th phase of summer, and that is the hardest to detect, and it's around February, March, and that's when the whānui, before the whānui star rises. So that's the next star that will rise, and whānui is the tohu for harvesting. So everything we've planted and been abundant in, we now harvest for winter. Well,
And one more question. So it's interesting that China work from their own indigenous calendar and also the Gregorian calendar. In your whakaaro and thoughts, do you think there will ever be an opportunity like that here in Aotearoa, New Zealand? And the reason I'm asking is because of the upcoming Matariki.
Absolutely. That is the biggest tohu, is that one. The fact that we now celebrate Matariki will be a public holiday is the first tohu that we're moving in that direction towards celebrating and embedding our knowledge to guide the way we live and structure our lives. So Papa Ririata, who I learned from, he worked with Dr. Rangi Mātāmua and a team of Maramataka and star lords or star experts to align the Matariki dates for the next 30 to 50 years. So he's been a part of that, working with the government, and that starts this year. So that's so exciting. And there's another part I hear. Sorry. Is there some social media links? So I usually would write articles on the spin-off, but they haven't been publishing them lately. I post on Instagram. Rangi Mātāmua has a page on Facebook as well. And yeah, there's not a lot out there, but it's starting to come back.
Ka pai. Hei, ngā mihi kia koi I te tuahine anō, ngā Manaakitanga Pikitore ki a koi me tō tamariki hoki. Kia ora mō tō wā. Thank you so much for your time. Kia ora mō tō mātauranga e pāna ki te Maramataka. Ngā mihi kia koi I te tuahine. Ngā mihi kia koutou I te whānau. Kia ora mō tō wā. Thank you so much for your time. Whānau, you would have received Puti Puti Harakiki. You would have also received a book on Matariki. So your provider would have had received a book on Matariki and also tikanga and some goodies as well. I think we also have to announce the winner as well in terms of the quiz. Have we got no? Okay, we will let you know who the winner is. So aroha mai whānau. But in saying that, this presentation and resources, the dial, if you haven't received the dial, will be made available in the staff section on our website. So in saying that, hey, it's the end of our session, and ngā Manaakitanga Pikitore. I'd like to close with our karakia, whakamoimiti, and I hope you lean into Maramataka for your own self-care and hauora, health and wellbeing. Ngā Manaakitanga. Kia ora. Kia hora te marino. Kia whakapapa paunamu te moana. Kia tere te kā rohi mua tō huarahi. May the calm be widespread. May the ocean glisten as greenstone. May the shimmer of light ever dance across your pathway. Ngā Manaakitanga Pikitore kia koutou, kia tata katoa. Mauri ora.
Mauri ora, kia ora.